The silver fork in her hand tapped ever so softly against the porcelain plate, a sound so faint that almost no one noticed. Except Clara. On stage, her husband was smiling. That smile, just generous enough to charm the crowd, just polished enough to conceal the weariness behind his eyes. He raised his glass toward the center table, where she sat. 5 years beside the most incredible woman I've ever known, he said. Applause erupted. Camera flashes flared. Clara smiled, perfectly, moderately, just as she had for years. Tonight, Kingsley Hall shimmered with candlelight and crystal. Tonight, everyone believed they were the perfect couple. And just as planned, Clara did nothing to disturb that illusion. Not yet. Clara Whitmore, 34, wife of Ethan Whitmore, the most successful real estate developer in Kingsley Bay. On paper, she held no title. At receptions, she was introduced as his muse. On the cover of last month's lifestyle magazine, they were described as the embodiment of elegance and endurance. She used to be a lecturer in modern literature at Fletcher University, until Ethan said, "You don't need to stand at a podium to prove anything. You're the light of this home." She resigned a month later. For the past 5 years, Clara had managed everything behind the curtain, hosting luncheons, arranging flowers for charity galas, signing off on gifts on behalf of them both. She always showed up on time, dressed impeccably, and smiled just enough in the photos. Ethan often joked that she was born to be the wife of a successful man. No one ever asked whether she had wanted to be anything else. Clara didn't resent him. She once believed she had chosen this life freely. She once believed great love sometimes asked for quiet sacrifices. She once believed he saw her worth, even if she no longer stood in lecture halls, no longer appeared in academic journals, no longer had a voice of her own. But lately, she'd started remembering the little moments. A passing comment. "Don't worry, she doesn't really mind." Averted eyes when she entered the room. Phones turned face down during dinner. Not enough to accuse, but enough for Clara to quietly return to herself, the woman who once knew how to read between the lines and understood that what wasn't said was always the most dangerous. Breakfast at the Whitmores was always the same. A silver tray, 2 steaming espressos, toasted barley bread, strawberries, and the financial briefing open on the iPad. Clara always woke first, selecting the coffee at just the right temperature. Ethan liked, spreading the butter in even, deliberate strokes, as if by scientific precision. He came down the stairs at 7:12, pressing a light kiss on the crown of her head, just like every day. "I've got an investor meeting at 8. Don't forget the Campbell's wedding tonight." "Of course," Clara replied, smiling still. She'd ordered his new suit a week in advance, picked silver earrings to match, and prepared a wedding gift so flawlessly tasteful it could have come from a showroom catalog. He didn't look at her, only at his watch. She tried to bring it up one rainy afternoon, just as he stepped inside from the office, shaking water from his coat. "Ethan, I've been thinking I might go back to work, just a few days a week. Fletcher Center invited me to teach a thesis seminar again. Why would you need to do that?" He didn't lift his eyes from his phone. "I mean, are you bored? It's not like we're lacking anything." "It's not about money," she said slowly. "I just thought maybe I still have something useful to give, outside the dinner parties." He gave a half nod, distracted. "Think about it. But for now, maybe focus on the gala next month. Press'll be all over it." At night, Clara lay turned away from him, the soft tapping of keys, the glow of his phone stretching over her shoulder, casting pale light across the white bedsheets. She counted seconds in silence. Usually, she'd have been asleep by now, but lately, sleep felt thin, like paper. She closed her eyes, trying to picture what Ethan was typing, to whom, and why he was smiling in the dark. One afternoon, she brought him lunch at the office, unannounced. "Your favorite pasta," she said cheerfully. "Thought we could surprise each other once in a while." The secretary looked startled. "Oh, Mr. Whitmore's out. Lunch meeting with Lena Hartley." the new partner on the Bayfront project. Lena Hartley? Clara tilted her head. I thought she lived in Charleston. She moved back a few months ago, the woman said, hesitating. Maybe Mr. Whitmore didn't mention it yet. Clara smiled, nodded politely, and walked away with the lunchbox still in hand. That evening, the dinner table was set as usual. Red wine, small candles, braised beef with mushrooms. Ethan kissed her cheek lightly, eyes elsewhere. You're still just as wonderful as the day I met you. Clara nodded, her gaze steady, quiet as a sea right before the storm. Inside her mind a list was growing, not a list of mistakes, but of all the things no longer being said. Clara began waking up earlier than usual, not to make breakfast, but to write. She opened her old laptop, the one she used back when she was still teaching. The blank Word document blinked at her, the cursor flashing as if whispering, "You still have a voice. Use it." The first lines were awkward and uneven. A few personal essays, scattered fragments, sometimes just lists. Things I've swallowed. What I know about him that he thinks I don't. If I disappeared on a Monday. No one read those words, except her. But writing reminded Clara that she still existed. One late afternoon, she stopped by the small bookshop near the bay, the one she used to visit years ago, before Ethan had his own office, before the Bentley, before the life that required her to be flawless all the time. Maggie, do you still need help shelving books? Clara? God, I thought you'd forgotten this little corner even existed. She didn't explain much. She simply offered to help a few days a week. No pay. I just want to be around pages again, and stand somewhere no one calls me Mrs. Whitmore. Maggie studied her for a long time, then pointed to a dusty shelf in the back. Start there. Philosophy section. Seems like you're searching for some questions again. In the weeks that followed, Clara lived two lives. By day, she was still the perfect wife at cocktail parties, still walked beside Ethan at public unveilings, still laughed on cue whenever someone said they were made for each other. By night, she documented every suspicious receipt Ethan left in the tray by the door. Bank statements showed transfers to companies she'd never heard of, but after a few quiet meetings with Jude Rowan, her old friend now working in financial law, Clara learned they were shells. Shells for unofficial spending. One February afternoon, she stood on the second-floor balcony overlooking the living room, where Ethan was on a Zoom call with Lena Hartley. She heard him laugh. Clara's not the type to suspect anything. She doesn't think that way. She lives in a world of poetry and scented candles. Clara smiled. Not at what he said, but because she had just finished copying the deed transfer for the East Bay project, the one Ethan had signed under her name without telling her. Jude had everything he needed to forward to the audit office. That night, Clara opened her notebook and wrote, "I'm not stronger than most women. I'm just someone who's endured long enough to stop asking for permission." The Kingsley Gala, the biggest event of the year, was 3 weeks away, and Clara was ready. Not to expose, not to humiliate, but to quietly step out of a role she no longer chose to play, and let the ones laughing under the lights slip on the very stage they built. Clara was never the type of woman to follow her husband. She believed in freedom, in personal space, in trust. But when trust begins to crack, it doesn't shatter all at once. It dissolves, layer by layer, like smoke dispersing, like an underground current. She hadn't planned to follow Ethan. She simply felt the need to go to the bank that afternoon. Passing by the Dove Hill Hotel bar, the one Ethan said he used for investor meetings, she hadn't intended to stop. But the light spilling from the second floor onto the pavement made her pause. A kind of instinct, ancient, feminine. She walked in, didn't ask for anyone, didn't call a name, just stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the second floor. The hallway was quiet, room 7, the door slightly ajar. Nothing unusual except for the laughter. Ethan's laugh, only softer, looser, and not meant for her. She didn't go closer. just stood at a distance far enough not to be seen, but close enough to hear. If Clara finds out, she won't. She's not the kind who asks questions. Clara's perfect, and mirrors don't look too deep. Silence, a kiss, glasses clinking, a whisper blurred by wine and want. You should go. If you've still got any sense left, I've already lost mine. Clara turned away, each step careful, soundless. On the way home, she stopped by the old bookstore and bought a brown leather notebook. Unlined, she wanted to write without boundaries. That night, she came home, changed clothes, brushed her hair, and sat beside Ethan as he watched the financial news. He didn't look at her. She didn't speak. She just wrote a single line in the notebook. March 12th, room 207, Dove Hill. You were there. So was she. I saw. I know. But I still smiled because I haven't written the ending yet. From that day on, Clara didn't follow him anymore. She didn't check his phone. Didn't read his emails, didn't ask. She didn't need more proof. She had already made a choice, and it wasn't forgiveness. It was silence. Observation, documentation, and the quiet, deliberate preparation to close the curtain on the play. Kingsley Hall had never looked more radiant. Outside, a path of golden lights ran along the entrance, reflecting off crystal-clear glass. Inside, it was a different world, the grand ballroom dressed in white orchids and purple phalaenopsis, red wine flowing endlessly, a string quartet playing in the far corner, and laughter rising and falling like ocean waves. It was the 10th anniversary gala for the Dawnlight Foundation, a charity co-founded by Ethan and Clara, or at least, both their names were etched onto the brass plaque in the center of the hall. On stage, a giant LED screen played a montage of scholarship programs, disaster relief work, clinic inaugurations, all proudly bearing the Whitmore Foundation logo. Ethan moved through the crowd like the unofficial mayor of Kingsley Bay. A perfectly tailored tuxedo, silver watch gleaming at his wrist, and a smile calibrated like an AI algorithm. Each angle optimized for maximum charm. Clara arrived 30 minutes late. She entered the room quietly, like a piece of art placed just right in the middle of curated chaos. Emerald gown, low chignon, eyes as cold as mirrors that no longer reflected anyone's face, heads turned, with admiration, curiosity, and a flicker of something else. Among them was one woman, Lena Hartley. Standing beside Ethan, one hand lightly resting on his arm as he introduced her as our new strategic partner from Charleston, now overseeing community finance restructuring. The red dress Lena wore got nothing wrong, low enough to catch attention, long enough to be called tasteful. Clara smiled, calm, steady, as if every spotlight tonight had been part of her lighting design all along. As the evening reached its peak, the lights dimmed slightly. The violin receded into gentle ambiance. The MC took the stage. To close this incredible 10-year journey, please welcome the co-founder behind Kingsley Bay's most impactful humanitarian projects of the last decade, Mr. Ethan Whitmore. Thunderous applause. Flashbulbs fired like fireworks. Ethan stepped up like he was born for this moment. His voice smooth, practiced, starting with witty remarks, then segueing into beautiful numbers about the foundation's achievements. Then he turned toward Clara, who stood near the front row. And above all, I want to thank the one who's been with me since day one, Clara. No one saw you poring over the earliest grant drafts, but tonight, everyone sees what you helped build. Second round of applause. Louder. He extended a hand toward her. Clara, would you join me up here? She stood. Ethan's eyes gleamed, believing this was the perfect finishing touch to their shared performance. Lena raised her champagne, gaze serene, as if her share of the spotlight had already been secured. Clara walked onto the stage, not hurried, not hesitant, like someone who knew the stage had been built just for this moment. She took the microphone from Ethan without looking at him, faced the room, waited for the noise to settle. One beat. Two. Then she smiled, barely. Thank you all for being here tonight. I just want to say a few things. Not long, I promise. A polite ripple of laughter from the front rows. Thank you, Ethan, for mentioning my role in the foundation. For a while, I thought I was just a name on the paperwork. But I do have a part in all this. For example, in the deed transfer for the East Bay project, the one signed in my name, though I never signed it myself, or the $400,000 payment made to a company called Hartley Strategic, owned by our new financial lead, Lena Hartley. The room fell silent, like a wine glass dropped into still water. Ethan shifted slightly. Clara, that's enough. She turned to him for the first time that night, her voice low, barely above the mic. Don't worry, I haven't mentioned the photos yet. No one breathed. Clara turned back to the audience. I submitted the full documentation to the Regional Audit Office this morning, also sent a copy to the Kingsley Journal, out tomorrow. If anyone needs further details, our legal counsel Jude Rowan is at the back of the room. Ethan stepped forward. Clara, let's go home. No, Ethan, she said. You go. I have a new life to begin. She set the microphone down. Below, Lena had already stepped away from her seat. The lights came back on, but Clara was no longer there. As the car pulled away from Kingsley Hall, Clara didn't look back. The breeze through the window was cool, like skin breathing for the first time after years behind glass. Beside her, in her handbag, was an old leather notebook. On the first page, things he never thought I knew. She had written the final chapter, and now she didn't need to write anymore. A week after the gala, Kingsley Bay still buzzed as if the lights from that night had never gone out. News of a sudden audit, shady financial trails, and Lena Hartley's abrupt disappearance spread through newspapers and private circles like seagulls swarming a single crumb of bread. Ethan no longer lived in the hillside villa. Clara left him everything. The house, the car, the guest list, and the tailored suits people believed made them important. She took only 3 boxes, 1 suitcase, and her battered old laptop from college. Maggie's little bookshop stood on a windy street where the breeze always blew against the usual direction. Clara worked from the attic, a space quietly converted into a reading room where natural light slanted in each morning and the scent of aged paper warmed the air like old memories. The first workshop began on Thursday. A creative writing class for women, 3 students, 3 half-finished stories, 3 pairs of eyes once told their voices didn't matter. Clara brought a stack of printed paper with 1 line in bold. They can control everything, business cards, contracts, reputation, but no one can confiscate your voice. That afternoon, she brewed herself tea and stepped onto the wooden balcony overlooking the harbor. The air was crisp. Yellow leaves had begun gathering at the base of the stairs. From her coat pocket, she took the wedding ring she had removed the night of the gala. No tears, no regret, just a quiet understanding. That night, Clara returned to her desk, not to record or to prepare, but to write like someone who had walked through a forest in the dark and realized she was still breathing. I used to think I had to be loved to be worthy, but the truth is I am worthy. Even if no one chooses me, no one applauds, no one calls my name from a stage. My voice no longer shakes. My hands no longer write from anger. I write because I'm still alive, and this time I am my own. She closed the notebook, lifted her gaze toward the horizon, where the sunset had turned the bay waters the color of baked clay and fire. Tomorrow might still be messy, her name might still be in the headlines, old voices might still whisper behind her back. But Clara knew this one thing. This season no longer belonged to Ethan. This was hers.